A new startup highlights the rise of video chat, but how close is it to becoming part of our daily social media routine? I'm David Gillen reporting for Business Day Live. We'll also be talking to Liz Alderman in Athens, and Winnie O'Kelly interviews a special guest about youth unemployment. But first, the founders of Napster announced a new social media venture yesterday. It's called Airtime, and its purpose is to allow users to talk to strangers via video chat in a controlled setting. Now, online services like this are nothing new, but they are becoming omnipresent in our lives. And at the same time, we're spending a lot more time with social media. Joining me now is Lexi Mainland, the Times' social media editor. Lexi, good morning.
Good morning.
So you spent a little time up close and personal with Airtime last night, including with strangers. How'd it go?
I did. I spent about an hour on there, and I talked to about 6 people, all of whom were fully clothed and ready to have a normal discussion with me. So it was already a step evolved from chat roulette, which was relieving. And you know, it seemed very fun. It was connecting me with people who had similar interests, who were born the same year that I was born, who also lived in New York, who had similar interests to mine. There were a lot of people who were interested in the New York Times.
Right. Now, this is sort of being characterized as a sort of Facebook, but face-to-face, right? My question is, I mean, things like Skype, everybody uses Skype now, I think, but what is the chance that something like this is really going to go mainstream, like, I don't know, like email and texting?
I think we have to wait and see. I mean, one thing I noticed when I was on there last night is that there weren't that many people on there. You know, as you say, Skype is sort of now the canonical way for toddlers to talk to their grandparents, but do people really want to talk to pure strangers? I don't know, it remains to be seen. I have to say, I had some pretty compelling experiences. And
all right, tell me a little bit more. Let's go.
Well, I mean, yesterday it was reported that someone who was just playing around with it actually bumped into Mark Zuckerberg on there and said, "Thank you for creating Facebook." And so I think the opportunities for meeting people who are actually really compelling to talk to are definitely there.
This is the thing. It kind of reminds me, like, you know, stepping way back in time to, you know, the original chat room. It has that serendipity that's kind of cool.
Yeah, and I think sometimes that gets lost a little bit on the internet these days. You know, people are so socially networked, and they have all these reasons on LinkedIn and other places where they need to talk to specific people, and this definitely does bring back a serendipity element. It was fun.
Okay, well, we'll keep watching this one. Thanks for joining us.
Sure.
So we're going to turn now to Greece, where the sovereign debt crisis is just getting worse, and to put it simply, Greece is running out of money. Joining me now from Athens is Liz Alderman. Good morning, Liz.
Good morning, Dave.
Great. I'm glad the Skype is working today.
For the moment.
Right. So look, basically, this is how you go broke. You know, slowly and then all at once. For real, Greece is going to run out of money as early as July.
That's what interim government leaders are saying.
Yeah.
Basically, you know, the big problem, and there are many here, but truly the big problem is that Greece is now in its 5th year of a very deep recession, and is also now really feeling the effects of at least 2.5 years of a very harsh austerity program. Salaries in both the public and private sector have been cut by up to 50%, and they're going to be cut more. A lot of businesses have gone belly up, and that means that the state has been taking in a lot less income, tax revenue than it would have expected. And so that the government is basically warning that, yes, they are probably going to run out of money soon after some very pivotal elections are to be held, unless they raise more taxes or the Troika steps in.
Hey, Liz, you've been ping-ponging back and forth, you know, from Paris to Athens, you know, for months now, reporting this. I think it's sometimes really difficult for people here to really understand what it is like there, you know, for ordinary people. I mean, have you seen a significant change? I mean, is there just more resignation, more anger? I mean, what's the feeling there?
There's a feeling, a sort of a mixed feeling of sort of resignation. Sometimes hopelessness, certainly sometimes anger, but the overall feeling is that after all this time, I mean, many Greeks, you know, acknowledge that they spent too much when times were good and that now they need to pay off their debts. But what they see is that this harsh austerity is biting them very significantly, and often what they say is that it's extremely unfair, largely because Greece has long had sort of a culture of effectively, a lot of people here have evaded taxes.
Absolutely,
That is actually something that has its roots way back in the Ottoman occupation, and it's something that doesn't sort of disappear overnight. But a result of all of this austerity is that people's paychecks have just been slashed. You know, unemployment is above 21%. People are leaving the country. People are frightened about what could happen if Greece winds up exiting the euro and perhaps returns to the drachma. And we have seen all of that fear and anger sort of manifested in the most recent votes of a left-wing leader. And we're going to have to see sort of how much power he might gain just in a couple weeks when these elections, new elections come along.
Yeah. Hey, Liz, you know, one of the things here, I feel like a lot of people here, even people in this building, have a bit of Euro fatigue. They're like, oh, come on, again and again, we keep going on and on about this. But, you know, I was talking to Eduardo Porter, who's got a great economic scene column today about how, you know, what's happening in Europe is, you know, matters a lot to the U.S. economy, and in fact is going to matter a lot, perhaps even in the November election. Now, I'm assuming that the Obama administration is leaning on people, you know, to try to come up with some sort of solution. And there was some little sense that maybe the wind was shifting a little bit with Angela Merkel yesterday. She's talking about, you know, a broader approach to banking regulation, for example. I mean, do you sense this shift that the Europeans are like, okay, no, we've really got to do something here?
I mean, there's certainly a shift going on. It has been a sort of a slow grind. Really, over the last year is when people like Angela Merkel started to acknowledge that things needed to change, that they needed to give up effectively over time some sovereignty if this grand, you know, experiment of, you know, the Euro monetary union was actually to work. People know that things are sort of pushed to the edge right now. That's why we're hearing Merkel respond to people like President Obama, Francois Hollande of France, and many other leaders who have been pushing back against the harsh austerity that she's basically been administering as sort of a medicine for this crisis. That being said, she's still not willing to go all the way. For example, on this issue of Euro bonds, which is an instrument that would allow sort of all the Euro member states to help support, you know, poor or struggling member states, is something that neither she nor the German people are willing to do yet. So basically, she's coming around, but she's still only willing to go so far.
Got it. Okay, Liz, you're probably off to Madrid next, I'm sure. Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dave. Take care.
And finally, economic pain in Europe and the United States is especially sharp for one demographic, and that's young people. A report released today shows that in the United States, only 1 in 6 young people without a college education is working full-time. Jonathan Bowles is the executive director of the Center for an Urban Future, and he's been studying youth employment in the New York area. And yesterday, Winnie O'Kelly asked him what has changed for people who have a high school diploma but no college.
If you didn't have a high school degree or more than a high school degree a few years ago, it was hard enough to kind of get connected to work and decent paying jobs. But in the last few years, it's gotten a lot rougher because with so many people out of work today, young adults and those without a high school degree or without more than a high school degree have really gone to the back of the line.
In New York, how bad is it for teenage unemployment and for finding work?
Well, it's rough everywhere across the country, but New York is especially difficult. I mean, it's got the highest teen unemployment rate of anywhere in the country today. You know, part of the problem is that we have so much competition for jobs here.
But your research has found there are certain kinds of jobs that maybe have some decent prospects, even for those who have less skills.
Yeah, there is some good news out there. I mean, in this kind of world that's so bleak for young people, you know, there are 26 occupations that we identified in New York that are growing in the next few years, that have relatively low barriers to entry, and that pay a decent wage. There's a number of jobs in healthcare, largely because of the aging of the population and some of the national Medicare changes. There's jobs in medical assistants, pharmacy technicians, and a lot of other community-based healthcare jobs that don't really require more than a high school or associate's degree.
One of the things striking about the survey was that many of the young people said that their future prospects were not as good as those of their parents, and many of them said they would need additional education to really find full-time work. Yet many of them don't have any plans to get it.
Kind of the college education gap is as great as it's ever been. I mean, the premium on skills that employers have today is just so big that it's a real challenge because there's so many people in New York and in this country that lack those skills today. There's been real cuts at the federal level in workforce development resources. At the same time, we haven't really done the best we can in gearing our workforce development programs to young adults.
So for all those parents who have their high school graduates living at home, the thing they can do the most is help them get back to school, right?
Stay in school. They've got to get them on the path to a college education, and it doesn't have to be more than an associate's degree, but they've got to get into community college and they've got to finish.
That's all for today, but stay with us online at nytimes.com for our continuing coverage of this and other stories. I'm David Gillen reporting for Business Day Live. Thanks for watching.